Do you know how a single night of fire nearly erased the greatest city on Earth and reshaped an empire forever? In the summer of 64 AD, Rome was not just a city, it was the heart of the world. More than 1 million people lived within its crowded streets. Marble temples touched the sky. Wooden apartment blocks leaned over narrow alleys, and markets buzzed day and night with life. Rome believed itself eternal. But eternity cracked when a small flame appeared in the darkness. By the time the fire died, 10 of Rome's 14 districts lay in ruins. Thousands were homeless. Ancient traditions burned to ash, and an emperor's name, Nero, became forever tied to flames, madness, and mystery. This is the story of the Great Fire of Rome. Not just how it burned, but how it changed an empire. Rome before the fire, a city built to burn. To understand why the fire was so devastating, you must first understand Rome itself. Rome was powerful, wealthy, and alive, but dangerously designed. Most ordinary citizens lived in insulae, tall apartment buildings made largely of wood. These structures were packed tightly together, separated by streets so narrow that sunlight barely reached the ground. Shops on the ground floor stored oil, cloth, grain, and wine, perfect fuel for fire. Open flames were everywhere: oil lamps, cooking fires, workshops with furnaces. Firefighting existed, but it was primitive. Buckets, hooks, and human chains were the only defense. Rome had burned before, but never like this. The night the fire began, on the night of July 18th, 64 AD, while most of Rome slept, fire broke out near the Circus Maximus, a massive stadium surrounded by shops and warehouses. A small blaze quickly fed on stored goods. Wind carried sparks across rooftops. Within minutes, flames leapt from building to building. Panic spread faster than fire. Families ran into the streets carrying children, icons, and whatever they could grab. Others were trapped as collapsing buildings blocked escape routes. Screams echoed through the city as the sky turned red. The fire raged out of control. 6 days of destruction. For 6 days and 7 nights, Rome burned. Efforts to stop the fire failed. Some citizens claimed they were prevented from fighting the flames. Others reported seeing men deliberately spreading fire, though whether these stories were true or fueled by fear remains unclear. Entire neighborhoods vanished. Temples centuries old collapsed. Homes, markets, and shrines were reduced to smoking ruins. When the fire finally seemed to die, hope briefly returned. Then the flames reignited. The second inferno, just as survivors began to search the ruins, fire erupted again, this time in a different part of the city. The second blaze destroyed even more territory. By the end, only 4 districts of Rome remained untouched. The capital of the empire was broken. Nero and the burning city. Where was Emperor Nero while Rome burned? According to some sources, Nero was in Antium, his seaside villa. He returned quickly once he learned the scale of the disaster. Ancient historians paint conflicting images of Nero. Some claim he watched the fire from a palace tower, singing about the fall of Troy. Others argue this was later propaganda created by enemies. What is clear is this: Nero opened his gardens to the homeless. He organized food distribution. He ordered emergency shelters built. But suspicion followed him. Who started the fire? Rome demanded answers. Whispers spread that Nero himself had ordered the fire, so he could rebuild Rome according to his own vision. To deflect blame, Nero accused a small, unpopular religious group, the Christians. They were arrested, tortured, and executed in brutal public displays. Many historians believe this marked the first major persecution of Christians by the Roman state. Fear turned into cruelty. Rome after the ashes. When the smoke cleared, Rome faced a choice: rebuild as before or change forever. Nero chose transformation. New building laws were introduced. Streets were widened. Buildings were constructed with stone instead of wood. Fire breaks were added. Height limits were enforced. From destruction came innovation. The Golden House of Nero amid the ruins, Nero began constructing his most controversial project, The Domus Aurea, the Golden House. It was vast, luxurious, and extravagant, featuring artificial lakes, gardens, and rooms covered in gold. The long shadow of the fire. Just 4 years later, Nero was dead. The Great Fire lived on, not just in ruins, but in memory. It reshaped Roman architecture, urban planning, and religious history. It also proved a terrifying truth. Even the greatest empire in the world could be brought to its knees by fire. Conclusion. The Great Fire of Rome was more than a disaster. It was a turning point. From its ashes rose a safer city, a darker political legacy, and a story still told nearly 2,000 years later. Because Rome may have been eternal, but even eternity can burn spa.